evening, everybody. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round number 5 of the Case King Pro Series. And we are at the wonderful circuit of Watkins Glen as we approach almost the halfway point in this incredible championship. It has been an utterly amazing series of races so far where Marco Bischoff, a two-time Pro Series champion, sits himself at the top of the series standings. And it is going to likely be as dramatic, as chaotic, as adrenaline-filled as it has been for the last 4 races of the season. 11 turns of mixed condition, chaotic, wonderful goodness, and I cannot wait to get stuck into the action this evening. And of course, as very much being pointed out in the chat, 5th race of the season, potentially a 5th different winner on the cards as well. And a little birdie tells me the AMGs, for the first time over the course of this season, are looking pretty pacey around this American racetrack. So whether or not those the likes of Dara McCormack, Tinko van der Velde, Aidan Walsingham, those are in that Mercedes GT3 car, may finally have the BOP start to play a little bit more in favour towards them and give them some opportunities in the race. And also, I do just want to say a massive thank you, not only for the incredible support, as always, on this channel, but some of you have already noticed that we have made our way over to Twitch affiliation, where you can now subscribe to us here on Twitch and give us just a little bit of extra support if you do feel so inclined. I can already see the likes of Snowy and Weenie in the chat have been our first to do so. A big thank you to those, of course. All of the support goes straight back to the wonderful team that puts all of this stuff together. There's so many people in the background that you sometimes don't have the joy of seeing all the hard work they put, whether it be the stewards, whether it be managing the servers, putting together the BOP, all of that wonderful stuff. So if you do have that little bit of spare capacity to support us here at LFM, and you fancy being a little bit generous, then do feel free to do so like that. But big thank you to those that have done that so far. Now, Watkins Glen, 11 turns, an undulating little American Nürburgring bit of goodness, really, because it is fast, it is unforgiving, and it makes for incredible racing, and it presents so many opportunities for fantastic action. Of course, last season when we were here, it was a little bit of a busy time. Of course, there is that very, very spooky chicane on the back straight, which sometimes does play host to bits of drama, does present some overtaking opportunities, but is a very tricky one to set your car up for. If you're in the cars like the Ferraris and McLarens, maybe those are a little bit more sensitive to the curbs and bumps, it can be a little bit of a pickle to sometimes negotiate your way through there. But we'll take our way for a little bit of a guide and a run-through of this incredible circuit. So barreling on down towards turn 1, a lot of camber around this circuit, and hooking yourself onto that inside apex is crucial because you carry all of that momentum through this flat out section of turn 2, 3, over the crest and onto the back straight, making your way down towards that chicane. Fast, high commitment, and a lot of confidence required in this one as you fly on through. 4 apexes come at you very thick and fast before you make your way into the outer loop of turn 5, down into chute corner, and then start to climb your way back up to toe. You may start to notice a little bit of a pattern with some of these names, because as you cross over the boot down towards heel corner at turn 8, a bit of a tricky one to make an overtake happen there, but it can certainly come off if you're alongside enough. Through turn 9, that was Luke Whitehead's favourite overtaking point last time we were here, and then through the final couple of turns of 10 and 11. Be wary of that concrete wall on the left-hand side as you exit out of 11, because you carry a lot of speed into there, and that front end can wash away from you. So drivers will have to be very much on their A game this evening. But what am I saying? It's the top split of the Pro Series. These drivers are some of the very best in the world of ATC and Low Fuel Motorsport. And I tell you what, just to even kind of put into perspective how talented the lineup of drivers is that we have participating tonight, we had drivers from Williams Esports, Yas Heat, and Brabham Esports only managing to qualify for Split 2 this evening. That goes to show you the level of caliber of the talent that we have in this top split of drivers, where you're getting drivers from teams like that unfortunately didn't quite make the cut on this occasion. Of course, the way that you make your way into these races, if you are unfamiliar is that you have your ELO, your ranking in the world of LFM, and then that allocates you to your server respectively. So it really just shows the level of talent that this field possesses, and it's exactly half the reason as to why we have such incredible racing every single week that we go out in the Case King Pro Series, because we have some fantastic drivers that are getting behind the wheels of these incredible machines. Final bits of practice taking place at the moment, and we're making our way into 15 minutes of qualifying before we then head on into 60 minutes of racing goodness. And as those have already said, that we do have some mixed conditions potentially on the way this evening as well, which just adds that little bit of an extra hazard maybe here and there, but certainly won't be lacking in forms of drama. Even if we have a completely dry race, I can guarantee you that we are going to have a lot of action from start to finish. As you can see, the likes of Dara McCormack in one of these formidable Mercedes right now, topping the timing sheets. As a natural fact, I say topping timing sheets, I think we've had a little bit of a wonky moment there. But he is on an improvement. We'll see what he does. He does a 43.0. Now he is officially topping those timing sheets and setting the benchmark early on in this practice session. Of course, these drivers could be playing around with their setups and things a little bit differently in these final moments of practice. They may be looking to dial themselves in ready for qualifying, trying to get that best one-lap potential that they can, or especially if you've got mixed conditions potentially on the cards as well, you can find drivers looking to kind of test out their race setup, make sure they're adapting okay to different temperatures, different conditions, because, you know, the balance of these cars, they're still incredibly sensitive. You know, they might look somewhat familiar with your road-going equivalents, but these are absolute motorsport racing thoroughbred machines that are very sensitive to the finest of margins, whether that be something that the driver is doing, or that be the amount of grip that the track is giving you, how dialed in your tyre pressures, whether or not you're quite in the window for those tyres to be at their peak potential, are all vital components to extracting the maximum from their cars. And these drivers always put on a fantastic show and demonstrate exactly why they are some of the very best in the world of ACC at doing just that. Looking at Abba now coming into that final turn of 11. He's practicing his pit entry. Not a bad shout. It's one of the kinda pit entries, as long as you're not too aggressive on the run through. Otherwise, you may have a little bit of a tough time trying to make your way across to that right-hand side of the circuit before that rather dangerous and spooky-looking barrier starts to make its way towards you. But other than that, it's a relatively friendly pit entry. We have some more interesting ones to negotiate. The likes of Paul Ricard certainly comes to mind on ACC. We have effectively what was the old pit entry, where you kind of have to dart your way in towards the right-hand side at the last minute. It's a bit of an awkward one to kind of weave your way through the barriers. So drivers just sitting in the pit box, and I think we've got maybe one or two still out on circuit. Sasha Vassner is one of them in that very distinctly liveried Unicorns of Love Mercedes, and keep an eye on the likes of this car this evening, because looking like these AMGs could be pretty pacey around here. I'm already seeing a fantastic host of names in the server. We do have some absolutely monstrous levels of talent on the grid, and I think I did catch a glimpse of the ELO for this evening was over 6,000. I think that's a threshold that we have very rarely broken. Meanwhile, Sasha Vassner has broken the 44s mark, but that is still a 9.5 margin to Dara McCormack, who will be looking to, I think, take a second victory around here on the bounce. He seems to run pretty well here at Watkins Glen. We didn't manage to interview him last time, the one around this circuit, so if he does cross the line, P1, he does decide to hop in for an interview, then fingers crossed that we have a little bit better luck than we did last time. So we shall see how everyone gets on. So qualifying then underway, and cars leaving the pit lane. But before we dive too much into the action for this evening, I am interested. It's always fun to, of course, just talk to you wonderful people in the chat anyway, but also just to get that idea, because each person has their preferences, whether it be the cars, whether it be the circuit. We always talk to the drivers week in, week out about, are they feeling good for where they're heading next? It can obviously vary, things like BOP, weather conditions, stuff like that, but it's always fun to find out about what they feel for each of these circuits. Watkins Glen, and we said, a tricky challenge even for the very best. So I point the question over to you guys in the chat as to whether or not is it one of your favourites. Is it, is it a little bit too much, or one that kind of leaves you on edge whilst you're racing, sort of takes the fun out of it? How, if there's very much kind of, I think, two sides of that. Bathurst for me falls into a similar category. It's one of those laps where when you hook it up, you feel incredible, you feel like you're on top of the world, but there is always this slight level of nervousness that you could go careering off into the concrete at any moment, and that sometimes can be a little bit unnerving in the grand scheme of things. But as we see our drivers making their way on through, I think in actual fact it's Philip Mannar in the Ferrari 296, another car that's traditionally run fairly well around here. He'll be the first driver to start a lap in qualifying and put times on the board. So we will head on board with the number 19 car and see how the Low Fuel Motorsport car gets on. Luke Whitehead, reigning champion, joins us in the chat. And a big welcome to you, good sir, as Philip Mannar, South African, starts to barrel on his way down towards turn one. These corners, especially in the middle sector, will come at you thick and fast, breaking 100-meter board and getting yourself tucked into that apex, using all of the exit curve that you can possibly get away with, and then carry that momentum all the way up the hill through turn 2 and 3. Easy flat, although bear in mind, whether we do have some rain or on the opening lap of this race, maybe a little bit trickier to work your way through there. The wide part of this circuit does invite some carnage and some interesting lines. Heading down towards this chicane, try and spot your entry point, chucking over the first scope and the second. Hope that suspension sticks with you nicely, maybe a little bit wider into that last apex than he would have hoped for. And then through turn 5 he goes, using all of the track on the exit and a little bit more. You can absolutely maximize the width of this circuit in a lot of different ways, using the engine braking. Heard him go down second gear briefly, back into third, cancel out the TC interventions. He heads now up in towards toe corner. Use that altitude to your advantage. It's, the elevation change is going to help slow down the car by a little bit quicker, and then you can get on the power nice and early. Now spot your braking in towards heel corner. We'll be braking just around the 75-meter mark, clipping that apex nicely. Running out wide onto the exit curve. Surprise overtake opportunities galore last time we were here from the reigning champion, through in towards turn 9. Now set yourself up for turn 10, turning in at the 100-meter mark, clipping at apex, trying to keep yourself within track limits, and then back over to the left-hand side. Be wary of that grass on the left, don't take too much curve on the right, and be wary of the wall that very quickly approaches you on the left-hand side before crossing the line. It's a 43-0 from Philip Mannar, so matching the sort of pace we saw from Dara, who immediately displaces the Ferrari, goes into the 42s immediately on a point 8. IMLO P2 in the standings. It stands P4 because he's being displaced by Matthias Kuhn in the number 6 McLaren. And all, of course, the likes of George Boothby getting himself in towards the top 5 again. Timo Carpenter sits P6, opening bids coming flying on through from all of these incredible drivers. And we will see exactly what sort of margins we have. They're usually pretty small. Niels Niox, a mighty time for the BF Plus competition driver. Well, a man that has been keeping himself in the thick of the action very much for almost every single race so far this season. AMG's the car looking to beat around here from the inside that I was provided, but the BMW looking like it may not be too shabby itself. And of course, the number 4 man in the server. He's already taken a race win so far this season. Took a little bit of a while until he saw himself get to the top of the standings once more, but he has managed to put it all together, and he's seeming very dialed in and very on top of his game at the moment, as he is continuing on a second flying lap. Dara has backed out of his second attempt, so I'm not sure if he's got enough fuel to go for another one in a minute. Amir Hosseini does a 43 dead, couldn't quite get himself into the 42s, but of course plenty of time, 10 minutes left, still left on the clock to dial in those improvements. As Nicholas Huben gets himself into the 42s, the number 5 car, 42.98 8.5 from him. Marco Bischoff improves to 8.8 as well. So time is being found. Track is rumbling in as we speak. Iemelo gets himself right behind the championship leader and his main rival in the championship, of course, just over 100, just under 100th, excuse me, separating the two McLaren drivers. But Niels, he's been absolutely dead even with his delta nearly the entire lap. It may just be the smallest of improvements. How brave does he feel in towards turn 11? Oh, I think he sacrificed a little bit too much on the exit there, and as he comes across the line, he does actually improve to 8.735, so he makes himself a 10th of a second clear of Marco Bischoff. Meanwhile, looking down to this man, Nicholas Huben, Unicorns of Love Mercedes, finding some pace, 3/10 up on the delta. As he comes through toe corner, you hear that V8 burbling its way out of there. It's such a good noise. It's what we love about GT3. I mean, there's many things to love about GT3 cars, in fairness, but there's these mix of characteristics and scenarios and, you know, approaches from each of these manufacturers. When you combine that with the wonderful drivers that we have on circuit, the community-driven BOP that we have here at LFM to give us such fantastic racing, Albin Manson, a 42.777. I do believe he has switched over to the Mercedes for this season. If I'm not mistaken, Amir Hosseini now does a 0.6. That is in the Ferrari. So Ferrari and BMW leading the way, but it may not be for long. Nicholas Huben does improve to a 42.5. Big lap time from the Mercedes driver, but it might be snatched away because Williams Esports is coming along very nicely in towards turn 11. Dara McCormack, the Irishman, he knows how to win around here. Half a second up on the delta. This is going to be an absolute milestone and a half. Iemelo's done a 0.4, but McCormack says no thank you and gets himself into a low 0.3 as all of these drivers start to kind of bail their way out of laps at the halfway point in the session. Nils Knox finding some lap time as well in that number 4 BMW. Lost a bit of time on exit last time out of the final corner. Looked pretty smart and tidy through there. Should get himself towards the front row, perhaps, and he does. Just 300ths of a second behind Dara's lap times. They're very, very close margins between the drivers at the pointy end of this grid. Grant Carreras for the Scuderia Ferrari Esports team, of course, a previous champion in the world of LFM, back with the Veloce crew, switching over to the Ferrari. A very young and fantastic talent has shown his mettle against the very best on many occasions. Currently finding 2/10 of a second, get himself up into the top 5 to become the lead Ferrari just ahead of George Boothby. Man, it sits P3 in the standings at the moment. Looking a bit further down the order, we've got the likes of Mateusz Tiskovic in the ITB Racing McLaren. He's found a little bit of time. He's up by a 10th of a second. Oh dear, I am sorry. I should have pointed the camera at it. Oh dear. Held the brakes. And unfortunately, Abba Santama got completely blocked off there. And has, I imagine, lost a chunk of time on his lap. Thankfully, of course, the wonderful thing about qualifying is you can reset to the garage. And yes, it was a bit of a commentator's curse, wasn't it? I think, in actual fact, before I do any more damage, we'll look at another car, which kind of feels a bit mean, because now I feel like I'm almost choosing which driver's going to be victim to the next commentator's curse. I can't win! But Sasha Vasta, currently up by 2/10 of a second on his lap time, as he wheels his way through the outer loop, down in towards chute corner, and get himself nicely tucked into the camber there. Such a fantastic sequence around this circuit, but very fine margins to be playing with. Drivers emerging out of the pit lane to embark on what will very likely be their final couple of laps also. As Sasha Vasta climbs his way over the boot, now continuing to find time, maintaining that 3/10 delta. We've also got the likes of Timo Karppinen just inside the top 30. Would expect him to be breaking into the 42 sometime soon, as Mr. Carpet, of course, multiple-time race winner, very, very quick, and likely to move his way up the order. Not the best final sector for Vasta. Also a little bit perhaps of a distraction from last week's winner, Maciej Malinowski, as he comes towards the line. It's awkward between the pair of them, actually, because Sasha Vasta finishing up a lap. I'm not sure how this is going to play out in towards turn 1, but 28th position is an improvement for Sasha Vasta, but he'll be wanting to find a little bit more time than that. Top 10 all starting to begin their lap times now. We've got the likes of Noah Reeder currently finding himself ahead of the championship leader, and of course his teammate Marco Bischoff, who has been absolutely mighty this season, has found a little bit of a spring in his step again, because we're so used to seeing Marco Bischoff when he was in the Porsche he took to back-to-back championships in with the past. He was absolutely electric on qualifier laps, and it's just taken a bit of time to dial in that pace once again, but he's starting to find his feet in this McLaren, as is the likes of Angel and Strozer in this Mercedes, gets himself up into 23rd position for the Veloce driver. And speaking of AMGs, Dara McCormack, the only one right now inside of the top 4 that is finding an improvement, and that's a scary, scary thought for the rest of these drivers trying to displace the Williams Esports driver from P1 on the grid. He's currently found a 10th of a second, has got a little bit of traffic up ahead. It's going to be very marginal, so whether or not that loses him any time in the last couple of corners, might start to suffer just a tad of aero wash from the front end of that Mercedes, which sometimes is enough of pain to get turned in to these apexes. Huben backs out of his lap time, but it's a good run out the final corner. I think it might be just a margin improvement, but the first of the 0.2s perhaps. Oh, it's a low 0.2 from Dara McCormack. The Irishman extends his margin to over a 10th and just starts to make the likelihood of displacing him that bit more difficult, especially when he finds an extra 10th of a second out turn 1 alone. And he's going to get a big slipstream all the way up the hill, but it might not actually be the most ideal of scenarios, because surely... There you see him flashing the lights away, but that McLaren up ahead, I do believe, is on a lap of their own, is entitled to finish that one. So it's a little bit awkward for the Irishman, especially when the McLaren starts doing things like that, and that's surely job done in trying to find lap time there. I can't imagine he's going to go any quicker on this occasion. Meanwhile, someone that is finding time is someone else in that Williams Esports crew. Felix Tanvinza in number 37. Speaking of Mr. Carpet, well spotted, gets himself up to P4. That's more like it from the Finnish driver. But Tanvinza, let's see how he gets on. Currently sitting in P10, but it's a 3/10th improvement as it stands, and that could very much be starting to dabble amongst the front row of this grid. Big commitment needed in the final couple of corners. Just a couple of minutes left in the session. Turn 11, maybe a little bit too much curb on the entry. Keeps out the wall on the exit, though. Not quite the 3/10th margin all the way to the line, but maybe good enough for top 5. P3, just 300ths of a second behind Niels Narks, and it is now an AMG made-up sandwich from P1 and P3, but the likes of Philip Menard putting in the Ferrari, the prancing horse, into the mix as well. And as Kylo in the chat, our statistician, who provides us with so many fun and informative facts, yes, apparently that any Mercedes that isn't at the pointy end of the grid, the driver is a fraud. I'm not sure if I'd go that far, but certainly the Mercedes has been presented as the favourable piece of machinery to have around here. But Niels Narks, continuing his fine form, does find some lap time and an improvement on what is likely... it's going to be close, actually. It could either be his final lap now, or he may have just about crossed the lap in time to start another one. But he got himself within 400ths of Dara's time. But that benchmark may be about to move in the near future, because, of course, Dara, we saw that he had a 10th in hand when he came out of turn 1 last time around. He started up another time, and he has got that margin once more. Now it's a case of trying to carry all of that to the end of lap. George Boothby gets himself up to P3. And I tell you what, the man is under a little bit of pressure at the moment is Marco Bischoff, currently down in P16, the championship leader, not feeling too comfortable as it stands right now in that McLaren. You've got Iemelo, the man that sits P2 in the standings. He's in P6 on the grid at the moment. But Dara McCormack, he is absolutely flying. 2/10ths up is the benchmark right now. Can he carry it through to the end of the lap? We could even be looking to maybe see a 41. It would be a very, very close margin to the end here, but we know he's had a couple of not ideal exits out of turn 11, so there's always, of course, you know, that pixel perfect lap time. It's amazing how much more pace if you were to absolutely nail every single corner, but that's what makes these drivers special. The caliber, my goodness, that was extraordinarily close to the wall, and I think he may be about to set the benchmark of 41.8 from Dara McCormack. No wonder he's not doing another lap time, because my goodness, the chances of someone knocking that Mercedes from P1 is extremely small. An absolute gauntlet and a half from the Irishman. I think Niels Narks, he's bailed out of any further improvements, so we know better than P2 for the German driver. Nicholas Huben as well in the pits, so P5 for the Unicorns of Love car. Tanvin's a hacker, finding a little bit of time, and that just rubbed salt into the wound, didn't it? Dara McCormack almost playing with his food. We got to the final sector, and he just found so much time. You saw the commitment they had through the final corner, ran it all the way wide on entry, up to the wall, and giving it a little bit of a kiss and a hug on the way out, and just absolutely wringing the neck out of that Mercedes. Grant Carreras jumps up the order at the death of the qualifying session of 42.222 from the number 3 car, almost, and gets himself up into P2. Grant Carreras in that Ferrari for Ferrari Esports. Good stuff from him to see himself on the front row. That is a tricky car to extract pace from around here. You have to absolutely nail the chicane. But speaking of which, Tanvin's a hacker. He is trying to make it a Williams Esports front row. I'm not sure though, with a turn 11 like that, he doesn't quite match the line from his teammate. It may be still a small improvement. It is! Even with the bonk on the wall exit, he improves to a 3-0 and gets himself inside of the top 5. So looking further down the order, we do have a couple more cars coming to the line, as that's going to be Florian Duacop, of course, Bathurst race winner a few seasons ago now. He goes up into 26th. Dennis Wittschalker coming to the line now as well. He finds half a second and gets himself up into the top 20. Good effort from him. But Dara McCormack, almost 4 tenths clear of anybody else. I said he knows how to win around here, and that is a benchmark and a half. My goodness. And you have to say that going into this race, that perhaps if you are Dara, you are just hoping for things to be plain and simple. Dry race all the way to the end. That would be quite handy, I imagine, from the Irishman's perspective. If you like Grant Carreras, Niels Narks in that BMW as well. Cars that may start to come into a little bit of a stronger position if we do have chances of rain. I can tell you early indications are not looking good. Halfway, at least to a halfway point in this race, we're not seeing much in the way of rain being on the way. So we'll have to see if that changes and transpires a bit later on. But I'll tell you what, it could add in for a bit of an interesting second half of the race if we do have that close to the end. So we'll keep an eye on how our drivers get on dealing with all of that, and we'll run through the order in just a moment. Before we do that, though, I want to say a big thank you to all of those that have subscribed to the channel so far. Thank you for all the follows as well. All the support is appreciated and incredible to have you all here. There's almost 150,000 of you over on the LFM platform, and of course just amazing to have this community growing ever further. We're also closing in on 2,100 followers here. Of course, we went over that milestone of 2,000 only a week ago, and you guys have been smashing it ever since then. We're almost at that next glorious little 100. So if you are enjoying the action, if you are ready to be buckled in for some incredible adrenaline-filled action over the course of the next 60 minutes, then do consider following the channel here on Twitch, because we have racing like this every single week. The Pro Series delivering some of the best action that you can find here on ACC and in the world of GT3 racing, and it'd be wonderful to have as many of you here as possible to enjoy it with me. Dara McCormack, though, qualifying, nailed, job done, but that first run up to the chicane, that's a different story. It's a long run out of turn 1 all the way up there, and there is a big slipstream. And I'll tell you what, the car that I'm looking at right now is Niels Narks in that BMW, because there's 2 things about that car. 1, very quick in a straight line, likely to give the Mercedes perhaps a little bit of trouble on the way up the hill. 2, Niels will know that if Dara runs away at the beginning of this race, there is a good chance that the Irishman, with that sort of pace margin that he seems to be showing, that we may not see him again relative to those on the grid. So Niels will be looking to perhaps try to make those pivotal moves early on in this one, because he may need them if he wants a chance at getting race victory. Dara McCormack, though, makes it another pole position with joint on the front row, Grant Carreras in Ferrari red for the first time. Niels starting in P3 for BS Plus competition, as Felix Tanvin's hacker for the next of the Williams Esports driver. I think a relatively recent signee to the academy team of that group. Fantastic stuff from him. George Boothby, ever consistent, ever in the midst. You can never count him out of a battle for the race win, joined by the South African on the third row of the grid of Phil Manar for the LFM team. Nicholas Huben for Unicorns of Love, the next of the AMGs. He starts in P7 with Dario Iemolo in those of Veloce Academy colours, very nicely liveried car on board that McLaren. He starts ahead of Max Florence. Great effort there from him in the SG Stern car as we now make our way to the end of the top 10. Noah Eder putting himself a few positions ahead of Marco Bischoff, a man that has been on fire this season and leads the championship standings. An uncharacteristic day in qualifying so far for him, but maybe opportunities to make it up in the race. Hugh Karppinen drops to P11 in the end, with Tommy Razia joining him on the 6th row of the grid in the number 38 car. Gert Fischer in that very lovely liveried West Competition Racing BMW. Saw that car getting some compliments on Twitter, X, whichever one it is now, and very, very much deserved for that one. Adam Spansky for ITV Racing. He starts in P14 with Marco Bischoff, the two-time champ, and number one man on the LFM platform and in the server, of course, ahead of Albin Manson. Good, impressive qualifying from the Swedish driver. So he lines up ahead of another AMG, Angel and Strozer, for the Veloce team as everyone starts to get underway for the first bits of driving in this race session. A formation lap, getting those tyres warmed up, brakes up to temperature, pressures dialed in, all of that fun stuff, as we'll be going racing very, very shortly. Matej P18, Dennis Vietschorger P19, and rounding out the top 20, Cody Sherritt for Genesis Esports, with Amir Hosseini 21st position by the end of that session. A very fast driver. He'll be looking to make his way up through the field. Valentin Barrier, a man that has run very well here in the past as well. That Aston Martin may have some pretty handy race pace. He'll start 22nd place ahead of this man, last week's winner, down in 23rd position. A circuit that he does intend to enjoy, but perhaps the pace of that Porsche just not being quite so kind to him on this occasion. Luke Anderson in 24th position, followed up by Vincent Proel in the next of the Ferraris, and then Jardier, the number 8 car for Yassit Esports. He starts in 26th position, as then Florian Duakop, the number 18, in another one of our Porsches in this field. So Maciej has at least one other friend. I think we've got maybe another one not too far down the list as well. Porsche friends in the top split. Alex Torregrossa, great stuff from him last week. A little bit of trickier qualifying from him on this occasion. He starts in 28th with Voltek Neuwirth 29th. Tariq Adam for Genesis Esports, very fast driver as well, another of this South African crew. He rounds out the top 30 with Mattia De Campo starting in 31st position. He'll be joined in the 16th row of the grid by Oliver Martins, the Swiss driver in that Aston Martin. There, I believe, is our final Porsche of the group. Oh, we've had a bit of something's gone out of sync. I think so. I may have disconnected, because there's Michael Frey, and something's gone a little bit wonky there in all of that, because we've got Abba Santama lined up next, followed up by... Yeah, this is all going a little bit wonky. We've got Mateusz Tiskovic next on the grid order. There we go. And then Sasha Vastner, what's the next car? It's all gone a little bit wonky. I must admit, I'm not quite sure entirely why. There we go. That's at least in sync. Nikita in 37th place. Hopefully we'll get the shenanigans out before they go racing, and then we can get dialed into the action in just a moment. 38th place goes to Kolosov. And next of the Astons, the cars coming into the final sector now. Zach Duran for Visceral Esports. He starts in 39th place, and packing out our grid, Igor Ognarondikov in the 40th position then. So fantastic stuff from our grid as they start to make their way towards the line. We do have, of course, a little bit of a funky bit of sinking business on the overlay on the left-hand side, but do not worry about that. Dara McCormack is lining up on pole position ahead of Grantas Carreras, and we'll be about to get underway very, very shortly as we look to see who is going to be race winner in the 5th round of the season. Will we have a 5th different winner, or will it go the way of someone for a second time this season? We will have to wait and see. Dara McCormack, he got the job done in qualifying, but getting it done in the race is another matter as they start to make their way towards the line. Waiting for green lights, and there we go. GT3's 40 cars barrel on their way down towards turn 1 for the first time. It's a good launch from Grant Carreras on the front row. He's going to keep the Mercedes on this, trying to go all the way around the outside, door-to-door stuff as they head through turn 1, and that's Grant has already sent off on the exit. And here comes the drag race I was talking about. Niels Narks immediately feeding into that slipstream. BMW power trying to soar its way past the Ferrari. Gap almost closed off, had to hit the brakes on the run in towards turn 3. Firm defense from Carreras, but the BMW trying to close the gap back again. Darren McCormack may have been saved from the charge from Niels there. Grant Carreras late on the brake, sweeps around the outside as they fly through a chicane for the first time. And Carreras absolutely glued to the rear. But see, somebody's in the wall! Somebody's in the wall already! Somebody went flying off on the exit of the chicane. It was Inestrosa in the background. Inestrosa tumbling down the order. Somebody else is out of Meg, Tarek, and Tariq Adam further down. He's gone around as well. But at the front of the field is Darren McCormack, then the lead ahead of Grant Carreras. Niels Narks almost squeezed into the wall, had to have lightning reactions in order to stay out of contact with that one. But I tell you what, Carreras right now has the bit between his teeth. He is not letting go of this Williams Esports Mercedes, trying to apply the pressure. And of course, this is going to be a very interesting game back and forth. Where is that Mercedes quick? Where is the Ferrari quick? You'd have to assume that the number 17, the leader, should be good in that chicane. Mercedes traditionally pretty handy over the curves, but when they went through there for the first time, Grant Carreras, whether it be bold, braveness, or the capability of the car, he was absolutely flying through there, and he is looking to apply all sorts of pressure to that Mercedes there, putting a couple of car lengths already on Niels Narks, of swapping of positions in the background. That's getting very dramatic. We've got Luke Hansen trying to defend from Vincent Pruell, who's got Votek Neuwirth trying to go all the way around the outside. Barely keeps out on the wall, but somehow makes it stick. And now Vincent Pruell slow on the exit, coming under pressure from Matty DeCampo. I think we'll see what happens when they get towards turn 1. It's getting very busy, but it needs to have a little bit of a gander and a look towards the top end of the grid. Darren McCormack hits the wall! Darren McCormack hits the wall on the run in towards turn 3. Very uncharacteristic mistake from there, and a bit of a needless one. I'm not sure how much damage he would have got there. Maybe just a little bit of side impact, but that won't be helping a straight line speed as they all fly on through. Tanvisa Hacker applying the pressure to Niels Narks, who goes a little bit wide through the chicane on the first flying run through there. Marco Bischoff making progress, but not like that. Jumps into the curb, manages to keep it just about together. That could have gone very differently. We've seen the bit going wild through there in the past, but Marco Bischoff, a championship leader, up to P14. And up a place at the moment, side by side, just behind them as well. Who was that? Cody Sheriff. We get a face full of tree and a bit of darkness in there as well. As Cody Sheriff, Dennis Wittschorker going toe-to-toe. Wittschorker defending the inside line from Maciej Malinowski. Of course, aggressive racer and has to be aggressive in the Porsche. It's a little bit like Luke Whitehead's recovery drive through the field. I don't think it ended very well in the end, unfortunately, for the reigning champ. But he put on an absolute masterclass of overtaking times, showing exactly how he needed to utilise that Porsche's characteristics to his advantage. Getting very busy. Maciej gives a little bit of a nudge to Wittschorker, got caught up on the apex there, squeezes his way around the outside, up into the top part of the circuit. They go there, and it's all kicking off here in the second half of the field. They're almost 3 abreast, heading in towards turn 10. I'm keeping an eye on the gaps at the front, and I can tell you it's very close with Carreras and Darren McCormack as well. Wittschorker trying to fend off Jardier, but Jardier has managed to get himself through and up into 20th place. This is the fight for the race lead, though, and Grant Carreras, fastest lap of the race last time around, only half a tenth quicker than Darren McCormack. But the question is, what is the speed difference between this Mercedes and this Ferrari? And even with that little bit of damage on board the Mercedes, it was side-on damage, so it should be relatively okay, but a very weird mistake from Darren McCormack, and yet you can see that Ferrari is going to have to get a lot closer if he wants an opportunity. Someone, though, that's going for it right now. Gert Fischer down the inside of Adam Spansky. Adam Spansky wants no side-by-side action at this stage of the race, in towards the chicane, allows the West Competition Racing car to head on through and gets the move done nicely. Valentin Barry using the Aston Martin straight line speed to his advantage, overtaking Maciej on the run in towards there as well. And oh my goodness, it is all kicking off at this end of the grid. Igor Ogrodkov has gone a little bit wide there. Angel and Strozer, after going off entirely on the opening lap, has got himself back into this fight. My goodness, trying to go around the outside of Michael Frey. Tariq Adam, I think, has had another moment again at the chicane. No, in the Stroser as well. I need to stop pointing the cameras. Some people pouring the Stroser got wide on the exit curb there. Car spun around, almost immediately loses traction. Big contact on the run through. Thankfully, no one else sent around in all of that. Kolosov, Ogrodnikov and Michael Frey having a bit of a toe-to-toe battle themselves. A bit of irony where they are on the circuit, but heading in towards the next corner now. In towards heel turn they go. And the Porsche under pressure at this point of the track. So is the likes of Mir Hosseini, Voltic Neuwirth in the Aston Martin, trying to find some more places, although run through turn 10 like that, I'm not sure that's going to particularly help him, and it's not because he's gone defensive on the exit there. Luke Anderson might have a pretty handy-dandy run. The South African Ford Genesis Esports locked into the slipstream towards turn 1 they go. How are they going to fare? The Ferrari has not got the legs on the Aston Martin, but I tell you what, someone that could be about to have a bit of an interesting time, not for those reasons, that wasn't my plan. Visiting another postcode is Sasha Vassner in the Unicorns of Love Mercedes. He's opened up that margin a bit further up than it was looking like a moment ago. Front end of the grid has all started to space out somewhat, but it's a bit of a tricky battle between Boothby, Menard, Iamolo. All of these are very close to one another. Team of Carpenter's gone wide on the exit. Lamborghini gets it gathered up all over again, but Razia, Gert Fischer, Spansky all make their way through, and it's down to P13 for the Griphax engineering car. And Tariq Adam has retired to the pits. Someone else that may be about to. Voltic Neuwirth, he's been having a busy time already. He's gone off for Circuit, has got going again, but it's all going on here at Watkins Glen. I said it would be action-packed filled from start to finish, and these guys once again showing exactly why that is the case. Here we have the fight now. Matty DeCampo trying to go around the outside of Vincent Proel. Can't make that one stick. He's got Toro Grossa on the inside in that BMW that may have the grunts, may have the power to make a move as they head on down the hill, looking towards the hill corner, showing the nose, but unable to make anything stick as it stands. Someone that is, though, trying to make something happen on Zyrev, going all the way around the outside in the Aston Martin. A little bit of door-to-door banging on the exit there, but up in towards turn number 9. He slots into 31st place as these cars absolutely nose to tail. But it's a different story at the pointy end of the grid. Almost a second separating P1 and P2. And it's a couple seconds down to P3 as well. McCormack, Karekas and Niox make up your top 3. It's very busy, though, from P4 downwards, with Tanvin Zahaka coming under increasing pressure from some of these other cars. As Orozarev looking up the inside. Can't make anything happen there. Let's check in with our group at the front. Philip Menard closing the distance in the slipstream, but can't quite get to the back of George Boothby to make a move stick. What about Marco Bischoff? Of course, Team of Carpenter just up ahead, trying to get himself back dialed in. This is where he went wrong a moment ago. He's not looking very comfortable through there at all, but manages to just about gather it all up. Still under pressure as Luke Anderson, Sasha Vassner go side by side. That's a scary line in a Ferrari to be taking over the apex there, but he manages to keep it all together. Holds on to 24th position for the time being as further down the order, scrapping away. Oh my goodness, Michael Frey almost went straight into the wall. Tiskovic down the inside of Kolosov. Those two going side by side. Michael Frey and Ogrodnikov in the BMW going side by side as well, and coming up on them thick and fast. Ava Santama trying to cover his way up the order. Tiskovic for ITV Racing trying to go all the way around the outside now. And so Michael Frey's got a fantastic view of both sides of this. He's got those two battling in front. He's got the BMW, the McLaren battling behind, and he's just trying to bide his time an opportunity as Tiskovic heading towards turn number 8. Can't get himself down at the inside on this occasion, and we'll have to wait for an opportunity to come his way. Aston Martin may be a tricky one, but you see Michael Frey in that Porsche having a big slide on the exit there. I tell you what, someone has managed to motor themselves along a bit is Tanvin Zahaka. Nils Niox starting to drop back a little bit, and these AMGs may be starting to get themselves dialed in terms of race pace. Fastest lap of the race, Darren McCormack last time around, 42.4, and I can tell you now that was a very good lap time. Grant Karekas 3/10 down on that Nils Niox, 6/10. There's no one else other than Tanvin Zahaka, of course, Dara's teammate, that is on a 42 lap pace at the moment. other than Grant Carreras in that Ferrari. Very impressive stuff from him. It shows, you know, when you're putting those sorts of lap times in and showing up the pace of someone like George Boothby, Philip Mannar has been mightily quick in recent weeks as well. That is a benchmark and a half. Sasha Vasta has got the position now done over Luke Anderson, who drops down to 25th position, and this Mercedes then sets off in sight of Amir Hosseini just a little bit up the road. Tiskovic once again locking horns with Kolosov down in towards shoot corner of Aston Martin. Just about manages to get it stopped in towards the braking zone, but the McLaren will be still locked onto the rear diffuser, I have no doubt, for the corners to come. But now, drivers starting to get themselves settled into a little bit of a rhythm. Not much of one, just about, with all the chaos that's still taking place. And you can just see that this train for P3 is starting to build up a bit. The two at the front have managed to run away, and the BMW of Niels Notts, the BS Plus competition car, rapid in qualifying, but now starting to maybe struggle a little bit in terms of race pace. But we know how good that car is in a straight line. It's going to be a tricky one to make a move on. Tanzvin Zahaka closer than he was on the last lap, and trying to get himself dialed in for a good exit right on board the rear diffuser of the number 4 car. Niels, who's been having his best season to date, now comes under a lot of pressure from one of the recent signings of the Williams Esports Academy. The British driver Tanzvin Zahaka closing the gap in the slipstream. Will Niels need to defend this one, or has he got just enough margin? He does have enough margin in hand, and he tells you there Tanzvin Zahaka is going to have to get a chunk closer, and with a run out of the chicane like that, that is not going to help him. And what's so tricky about the proximity and about the placement of that chicane is that when you get there, if you are, you know, very close to the back of the car in front, you just can't see, to be blunt. You cannot see the apex, especially when you've got this darkness as well. It just, you know, your reference points, they're so fine and precise at this level of driving as is. As Tommy Rozier capitalising on a poor exit for Max Florence, 2 AMGs going side by side on the exit of toe corner there, but Florence is going to hold that inside line, but may come under a little bit of pressure as they head on down to heel, as the Frenchman trying to gain late move towards the inside line from the number 14 car. Rozier will try to set up the exit. Can he go for that surprise move down the inside in towards turn 9? Can't quite get across. The Mercedes parks it on the apex just in front, but these two are going to have a pretty epic battle towards the chicane. I imagine someone else that is in a pretty big fight as well, like Florian Duacot battling away with Dennis Wietschork and Amir Hosseini. This little trio having a scrap as well. But yeah, as with any circuit, when you're glued to the back of the car in front of you, it's sometimes really, really tricky and difficult in order to just know where your reference points are, know where your braking points, turning points. And then when you've got these little kind of these dangerous curves and various outings that can put you in a bit of a tricky spot at any point in time, it's just so much more pressure. Amir Hosseini has sent it down the inside of Florian Duacot, but poor exit out of the final corner, and Hosseini in the number 29 car has got himself up into 22nd place. Battle for P4, they all stay as they were, but Florian Duacot trying to fight his way back on to the Ferrari, locking into the slipstream, going to be left barely a car's width on the left-hand side. He'd be brave to go around the outside there. He's got these unicorns of love, Mercedes, and Sasha Vasta comes storming up the rear, and it's going to be very close. Little bit of a clumsy moment for the Porsche. Mercedes has to get on the brakes earlier than he would like. He's got pressure from behind as well. Luke Anderson, who, whilst he did lose a position, has not lost grip with that Mercedes. There's a little bit of contact. Oh my goodness, Florian Duacot barely held onto that one. Sasha Vasta gets the move done. When the stewards have something to say about that, we'll have to wait and see. Michael Frey's gone around on the exit of the chicane now. Trouble for the Swiss driver, and we'll try to see if we can catch up with what happened to him there. Looking through the field, I think we might just have about enough time in order to see this one through. So following close, this is going to be the perfect... Oh my goodness, that was a tank's lap and a half. Oh, and he almost caught it the first time. The pendulum effect on that Porsche, absolutely devastating, and that's rather unfortunate. And some extra oh dear. So the number 27 car running into, I think, definitively quite a bit of strife there. But that really just absolutely whip-shotted around on the Swiss driver. And, you know, that's a car that he has been getting to grips with pretty nicely in recent weeks. So that goes to show you the limit that these guys are on and how easily unsettled these cars can become. Pace advantage for McCormack starting to wean off a little bit. He was still quicker than anyone else in the field, admittedly, but Grant Carreca's keeping him honest at this stage of the race. As I saw a white flag, something was looking a bit spooky for our leader. I think that was just a timing board being a bit funky. Meanwhile, Albin Manson side by side with Marco Bischoff. Bischoff has to be careful here. He's got a championship to be thinking about. And Albin Manson, brave around the outside there, manages to hold back the #1 car, the two-time champion from season 7 and 8. And the current championship leader braves it out. And that was a great move from the Genesis Esports car. And, of course, heads-up driving from Marco Bischoff as well to avoid too much contact there. It got a little bit spooky in the mid-portion of the chicane, but they managed to keep it all together. And everyone stays on the straight and narrow, looking back towards this fight for P4. The two Ferraris, Philip Menard starting to get a little bit racy and forcing George Boothby to have to defend in towards turn 9. Not often you'll see George Boothby coming under pressure. Meanwhile, Cody Sherritt side by side with Matthias got the Ferrari trying to go all the way around the outside. That's going to be tricky. They've got Valentin Barrier, who's got a great view of this one, barely ahead with between them, but Matthias Cody is going to slot into the path behind Cody Sherritt, and I'm sure they'll duke it out on the run up towards the chicane in a moment. They've got to be wary of that Aston Martin because that is a car that is pretty handy in a straight line as well. Look at the margins to the wall. You can see drivers prepared to risk different amounts on the exit of turn 11 there. Valentin Barrier may even think about moving towards turn 1, and he does. Sends it up the inside. Can he get the job done on the exit? Still side by side. Jardier now comes into the party, and he's going to slot in behind the rear wing of his good friend and teammate, trying to use that slipstream to his advantage. We saw it all go very, very, very wrong in the opening lap when they went through there in the first occasion, but managing to get through there okay this time around. And Jardier has enough to work with the slipstream, of course, matched in terms of horsepower overall with the McLaren he was battling with, but gets the job done and himself up into P18. As there's a yellow flag for another Porsche. Oh, it's all gone wrong in the middle lap, and Luke Anderson is around as well. So Florian Duakov, Luke Anderson running in strong himself. Oh my dear, there's Igor Ondakov having a bit of a moment on the exit as well. Probably a little bit caught out by whatever carnage was taking place up ahead of them. The chicane strikes again, and by the looks of it, so this is Florian Duakov coming under pressure from Luke Anderson. Anderson is going to go towards that inside line as they head in towards this apex. Oh, there's contact immediately on the entry. Oh, dear. And at that point, the pair of them were just passengers. Florian Duakov unsettled by the initial contact. Nothing he could do to recover that car off that trajectory. There's Odorodkov having a bit of a moment as he came flying on through, but managing to just about keep it out of the wall on the exit. But frustrating stuff for those guys. Meanwhile, George Boothby and Philip Menard, two Ferraris, still applying the pressure to Tad Vinzer-Hacker up front. Now, interestingly, last time around, 42.8 for your race leader, Darren McCormack, 43.1 for Grant Carreca's, 42.9 for Nils Knight. So maybe the BMW taking a bit of time to get itself kind of warmed up, tyres up to temperature, and dialed in around this circuit. But maybe as the DEG starts to kick in around here, that car's starting to feel a little bit more balanced, a little bit more friendly to drive around here and extract some lap time. So maybe top two not off the cars yet for Niels, as the number 2 car, George Boothby, has been a championship protagonist on so many occasions, hasn't quite ever managed to take that P1 spot in the end, but of course the winningest driver on the LFM platform, so he knows what he's doing, that is for sure. Kolosov versus Zach Duran. Zach Duran losing out to the Aston Martin driver as a couple of cars into the pits as well. I think having some interesting times as that is Duakov and Ogrodnikov only a lap later from where it all got very busy earlier on. And something has gone horribly, horribly wrong between those two cars. We'll go back on the replay again. So Florian Duakov, Igor Ondakov, here we go. I don't like where this is going because I have a horrible feeling this is going to be a horrible combination of just kind of innocent mistakes here. So Igor Ondakov, does he have a bad time through the chicane? He does. He goes sideways and he's going to bounce off the wall, and Florian Duakov with nowhere to go, unfortunately, then finds himself locked straight into the back of the BMW. That is a very unfortunate series of events. Meanwhile, when we go back to live pictures, I think we've got some action taking place here between the two Genesis Esports cars. That is Santama and Anderson, and they have the Chilean driver of Angel Inestrosa coming up the rear as well. That's a wide line and a half from Luke Anderson. He keeps the position somehow, and then in towards turn 11. I think Inestrosa, though, is going to get a better exit than the pair of them. He's at least going to get one on the run in towards turn 1. Number 35 car trying to make amends for the strifer he ran into earlier on. Down the inside, he looks to go. A little bit of door-to-door contact on the entry, but the Mercedes driver is going to get the move done. But that does drop him a little bit away from Luke Anderson. I'm not sure if that Mercedes is going to get much in the way of slipstream. Flashing the lights from Santama. Obviously not happy with that there, and the question is, does the McLaren have enough pace to try to come back at the Mercedes as they get towards the chicane? I think he's going to be a little bit too far away, but just like that, 20 minutes of action has gone by. That crept up on me because the pit lane has now opened, so mandatory stop if you're new to the world of LFM and the Case King Pro Series. Mandatory stop in the centre of this race in this 20-minute pit window, and that window has opened up now. Now, the thing that we don't know is whether or not there is anything lurking in terms of mixed conditions, rain, or anything like that at the latter end of this race, because that could very much change how these drivers go about what they do at this point in time. George Boothby has been showing strong pace so far, but struggling to find a way past this Mercedes. Just not quite enough straight line speed from this Ferrari. Has now managed to get quite a happy gap to the back of his 296. Philip Menard drifting down to a second away from the Veloce car, as George Boothby once again looking to just go for consistency right now. It hasn't, other than his race win at the beginning of the season, it hasn't quite been in race contention at each time that we have gone out. Valentin Barrier, first man that comes into the pit then, so very much going for an aggressive undercut and hoping perhaps that Aston Martin's straight line speed will be enough to protect him in the latter portion of this race when it comes to these drivers duking it out and fending off those in the slipstream. Sasha Vastner, speaking of which, has a pretty good run onto the back of Dennis Vietschorka now, trying to climb up to the back of the McLaren, but just can't quite get to the inside before the chicane comes along. It heard the early upshift there. That's to try to help that traction as he makes his way over the curbs, trying to keep the foot planted as much as he can to keep momentum up, but needing just a little bit of a higher gear in order to make sure the back of that car sticks. Timo Karppinen continuing to recover his way up through the order. He's P13 at the moment, currently down 2 positions, and trying to see if he can snatch one away from the ITB Racing. Look at those pictures, absolutely glorious stuff. What an angle for those cars as they come flying over the crest of the boot. Spansky's got a little bit busy time building up here because he's got Karppinen and Manson, who's been on the charge in his opening stint, closing the gap up to him, as is Tommy Rozier still scrabbling away with the other Mercedes of Max Florence just inside of the top 10. So as we approach the halfway point in this race, we will look to some stewards inquiries in the near future, but we are just 10 followers away from that 2,100 milestone. So if you are enjoying the action that these incredible talents are putting on, as Marco Bischoff comes into the pit lane, your championship leader, going for an undercut himself, then do consider giving the channel a follow, because these drivers, they put on some amazing, crazy action every single time we go racing. And I can tell you now, this is only just the beginning. We are going to have some fantastic stuff in the second half of this race. George Boothby, Philip Menard having closed that gap back up to the rear of the 296 ahead of him. Not quite able to put enough pressure on to the Ferrari to force an error. George Boothby staying composed, as has Tanzvin Zahaka. Impressive stuff from him. Niels Knox, a little bit of a wobbly moment on the exit of that turn. Something has happened. Spansky into the wall. The fellow ITV Racing car, that has gone horribly wrong. My goodness, that was a heavy impact for the number 7 car. It's unusual that you see a car head with that much momentum into the wall. He's got Amir Hosseini all over the back of him, but I do want to see what happened there. And I'm worried that we might miss it. So here we go, coming in towards the chicane. Karppinen was having a little bit of a nosy at the chicane. Coming through, 3rd apex okay, 4th apex, oh my goodness, that's where it all went side rock. And then unfortunately, just at that point, he got caught on the grass, and then it was just no stopping that McLaren. And he came under all sorts of pressure from the likes of Hosseini and Vassner, and I can tell you both of them have made their way on by. That is a car that is likely going to be feeling a little bit grumpy and unhappy at this point in time, and is going to be followed up by a grumpy driver as well. Dennis Wietschorker has got through as well. So once again, just showing as George Boothby has managed to get the move done. So George Boothby has got the move done on Tanvin Zahaka. We'll try to go back as far as we can on the replay, see if we can capture the move that allowed this swap to take place, and we are going to be able to catch this. So here we go. Is it a mistake from the Mercedes? He's done so well to not put a foot wrong in towards this right-hand, and he just goes a little bit deep, bit wobbly on the exit. George Boothby, great momentum. Oh my goodness. And with a little bit of teleportation, apparently. Up to kind of Back to the Future style, warped our way over towards the next corner. And he has made his way through. Oh dear. When we go back to live pictures, I think we've got some extra drama because Philip Manard is tumbling down the order. Yellow flags out for him. And I have a horrible feeling that the Ferrari has not had a good time at the chicane whatsoever. We'll try to see what's kicking off with them. We've got Albin Manson applying pressure to Timo Karppinen as well. We'll try to see. Oh my goodness! Oh, that's just cut away at a really terrible time because Timo Karppinen and Cody Sherritt, I think, have just had a very, very bad moment. There was the mistake from Philip Manard. So Philip Manard goes wide over the exit chicane, heavy contact with the wall, and now, after that, Timo Karppinen, so he makes a big mistake. Albin Manson goes flying up the inside in towards turn 5, and not that we quite caught it. We'll have to try to go on a double, kind of double back on the replay if we can. I think we might be safe to, but here we go. Replay coming out of the exit of the corner, and Timo Karppinen gets it all wrong through there, and there was contact between them, and as we go back, Timo Karppinen has now dropped back behind Philip Manard. So, oh my goodness, just in the space of a couple hours, just as things were starting to calm down a little bit, unsurprisingly, Karppinen, Philip Manard, Manson all come into the pits, and yeah, that, my goodness, and just, unfortunately, a perfect demonstration from some of the very best that even when you have this incredible host of talent, 6,000 plus ELO in the server, may I remind you, that this Watkins Glen circuit, when you're pushing this hard in these conditions, the data's not helping. The margin of error is so small. Of course, we also are in this TC0 meta, which does make these GT3 cars a little bit more kind of a little bit more wheelie, under power, and a bit more tricky to keep under control. And unfortunately, that was a major series of incidents and crashes there at this phase of the race. So stops coming on in now. McCormack, Carreras, and Nart still make up your top 3. Times have definitely started to even out between them, though. So McCormack has not run away with this. He's only a couple of seconds up the road from Carreras. And last time around, the Ferrari driver was faster, only by just under a tenth. But still, over half an hour of this race left to go. And still plenty of opportunities for action and things to change. Tommy Rozier still applying the pressure to Max Florence. He's got Gert Fischer in that West Competition Racing BMW not too far behind either. That car, of course, one that can make moves on the back straight. Mateus couldn't apply the pressure to Maciej Malinowski, who's got his sister teammate car ahead of him. Jardier in the number 8, still sitting in P12. Gained 14 positions. Sasha Vassner's gained 20 positions in this race as Noah Reeder comes into the pits then. So he'll be one of the cars. Oh dear. Oh, I got very confused on my reference point. I thought Maciej had binned it into the wall, last week's race winner, but they thankfully have managed to keep it all going. More cars coming into the pits then. The likes of Rozier, Ida, Mateus Kuhn, Jardier, Vassner, Wietschorker, Kolosov, Orazaev, all into the pits now, and we'll start to get an idea as to whether or not some of these undercut strategies have worked out for these drivers. And yes, I do want to have a look at the penalties, but my goodness, it's just been such a mental situation so far this race with these drivers in the action. You know, same old, same old. I haven't got too much in the way of excuses. This is kind of what we expect in the Pro Series, that I haven't actually had a chance to look yet. We had one drive-through penalty for the number 24 car for causing a crash on the first lap, and that belonged to Oliver Martins. So that's why we saw him dive into the pits very early on. Then we had another time penalty for Oliver Martins, unfortunately a 10-second time penalty for causing another collision. Number 18 car received a 15-second time penalty, excuse me. That was Florian Duakop for causing a collision himself. Narita just, oh dear, what's happened there? Narita, I think, has just pulled over to the side of the road. That's very peculiar. What has happened to the fellow Sprout Esport car? So emerging out of the pit lane, I don't know what he's done there. I don't know if he's got his pit stop wrong, if he's programmed something wrong in the strategy, or if it's some sort of form of hardware failure. That is very... He possibly, yeah, maybe didn't add any fuel into the car, comes out of the pit lane, and there you go, almost realizes immediately whatever the issue, and parks up, and that is a disaster then for Narita. Was having a great day, of course. His teammate, an extremely good benchmark, Marco Bischoff in the fellow Sprout Esport McLaren. As also I can tell you now, a lot of these top guys coming into the pits, both Williams Esports cars are in, but Narks, Busby, Iemolo, DeCampo, Toro Grosso, Duran, all staying out as it stands at the moment. Korekis is in as well, of course. Niels Niox lost a chance at a potential race victory last week due to a slow stop. It could possibly be a similar situation for one of these other guys. Grant Korekis has got himself underway. There's Tans Vinzahaka. He'll be wheels down in just a moment, I am sure. So the camera starts to have a little bit of a moment. There's Darren McCormack getting underway, and they will start to leave the pit lane. It looks like, between the pair of them, that margins have been roughly maintained in all of that. We'll look back to this fight with Albin Manson and Orozarev for what is currently P27. Of course, pit stop still filtering on their way through. So if we catch up with the penalties, so we had that 50-second time penalty, Florian Duakop, and that is it. That is the last of the penalties that have been dished out so far this race. And apparently it was a stop-go 30-second penalty for Narita, so he didn't get the stop wrong, but what he did get wrong was that he sped into the pit lane. Meanwhile, someone's got a bit of a busy time up ahead of him, Timo Karppinen, who's already been in the wars on several occasions, getting very close with Vincent Broel and Sasha Vassner in that Unicorns of Love Mercedes. Is going to come flying around the outside of that Ferrari and maybe even about to try something very spectacular into a chicane. Surely not. Does get the move done on Broel. Got to keep it nice and tidy as he weaves his way through the apexes out of chicane, manages to just about keep it all together, and the German driver gets himself up into 22nd positions. Niox, Boothby, Iemolo all into the pits now as well, so stops will have been completed, and we'll start to get a bit of an idea as to how this is all played out. Meanwhile, Gert Fischer absolutely glued to the back of Tommy Rozier. And look at that, Max Florence has lost out to both of these cars in the pits. So the Mercedes driver that was holding off the Frenchman for quite a while, as those guys were going toe-to-toe, as also, look at that, Marco Bischoff find himself in the midst of this as well. P13 for the championship leader. Only up 2 places as it stands, of course. Likely will then end up gaining over a few more as our final drivers start to come into the pit lane. Toro Grosso and Zach Duran staying out for the time being. It's going very long into this race. And overall, I'll tell you what, the biggest loser in this is Felix Tans Vinzahaka. He's lost out to Dario Iemolo as well. But that Mercedes, has it got enough grunt in a straight line when he locks into the slipstream? Well, that McLaren is gone. There is no way that car is closing to the back of the Italian, and the man that sits P2 in the standings climbs his way up to what will be net P5 in this race, if I'm not mistaken, for him, as he looks to try to bank in another consistent batch of these points. Meanwhile, Marco Bischoff, different story for him. First time we've really seen him in trouble this season. Now, of course, remember, the K-Scheme Pro Series there are 2 drop scores. So effectively, these guys, if they participate in every race this season, only their best 10 out of 12 results will count. The crucial thing is trying to not have that many bad results, because then, you know, you can have a couple from time to time, but if you have some disasters, unfortunately, like the reigning champion, Luke Whitehead, just getting caught up in incidents on the first lap, that unfortunately then that can really put you into a bit of a compromised position for the rest of your championship campaign. But Marco Bischoff so far has had a very consistent opening 4 rounds, but this one may be looking a little bit tricky to yield a great deal of points from, but you never know what's going to play out in a championship like this. Every single position, every single batch of points does look to count, as Bischoff then still hunting, searching for an opportunity. The Mercedes, good and straight line, but so is that McLaren, I would imagine. And it's not the number 14 car isn't getting the greatest amount of slipstream from that BMW in front, so not too much in the way to keep that car protected. A couple of other fights taking place on circuit as well. Of course, Philip Mannar, having tumbled his way down the order after his incident, finds his way down behind his fellow South African, Cody Sherratt, currently sitting in P12. So after all the stops have been done, your top 10 looks at McCormack, Karekas, Niox, Boothby, Iemelo, Tanvir Hacker, Razier, Fisher, Florence, and Bischoff in all of that. So you can see with those position deltas on the left-hand side, Jardier still big mover in the field. So Sasha Vastner up 17 places to get himself up into P18. And Jardier, he's got, of course, you know, his racecraft is very often some of the very best, and it's that wealth of experience he so often uses to move his way up the order. But that one lap pace, that is where he has been struggling this season. And I remember him mentioning himself, you know, sometimes he absolutely nails it and feels very dialed in with the car over the course of one lap, but other times he just can't find or feel where that limit is. Meanwhile, someone is about to find the limit potentially. Luke Addison almost trying to set up a dive down the inside. He has forced the error almost for Morozairev, who for a moment there goes wide, but does shut the door on exit. And there's the flashing of lights, the dismay expressed from the Ferrari driver there. And and a fantastic comment in the chat that I think there are several people that we can have that all have that same claim to. I like your thinking, and we can all cheer ourselves up with that sort of statement. And yes, absolutely, Jardier, big gainer so far in this race. P14 for the 8th place for the number 8 car, as Torregrossa comes into the pit lane. I can only imagine that is for track limits. Either that or he had a stop and go 30-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane when he did go to originally box, because he wasn't too long ago. I'm not too sure. We'll have to see what the Spaniard does, but unfortunately, after showing such good promise last time, he's a stop go 30. Unfortunate stuff there. Big mistake from him. And there was me saying earlier on, this was one of the kind of pit entries. That was quite clearly another commentator cursed to death. I'm starting to get the impression I can't point the camera at anyone, and I also probably shouldn't speak. So join everyone else and just spectate this incredible race, because these guys putting on fantastic action every single minute of this 60-minute race, and we've still got 23 of them ticking on down left to go. McCormack still leads away then, opening up his advantage, and a 3.5 second lead. But I tell you what, someone that found himself with a little bit of a spring in his step in the second stint is George Boothby. 43.005, about a 10th.5 faster than the BMW ahead. Now, we saw in the first stint, Nils seemed to struggle a little bit, kind of got bogged down in the opening few laps of the race, but then the pace started to come back the way of the BMW driver. Meanwhile, Carpenter versus Vastner, kicking off further down the order of the battle for P17. Vastner almost sent in towards the exit curb out of there, but just about given enough room. But I'm sure that's a battle that is going to continue on the run up to the chicane. Speaking of which, George Boothby locked into the slipstream of the BMW. That BMW is very quick in a straight line, and I find it hard to believe that the 296 is going to be able to hold with him. What about Tanvir Zahaka? What about Max Florence trying to apply the pressure to Gert Fischer in that West competition? Racing BMW again. Closer, is gaining, but not near enough when he needs to be. White flag briefly out for Tanvir Zahaka, but I think that's just the overlay being a little bit spooked, a bit overly sensitive. Meanwhile, Sasha Vastner has here his opportunities fair. It'd be a late move towards the inside, but it's not going to be. He decides to hold position for the time being. We're trying to see if he can find the momentum elsewhere. Loses a car length or so on the exit of the chicane. That's partly with the dirty air and also just carrying that extra momentum. Very difficult to get the car slowed down and spot it perfectly. Orozairev trying to use that Aston Martin straight line speed to his advantage to make his way past Innestroza. Goes from being the hunter to potentially hunted. Gets a compromised run through the chicane, and Luke Anderson bearing on down in that Genesis Esports Ferrari. So close battles taking place right now, and a three-way fight suddenly emerging for P7 because Gert Fischer in that number 30 car, very close to the back of Tommy Rozier, the Frenchman, up 5 positions. Gert Fischer up 5 positions himself. But right now, that BMW looking like the faster of the two. Same cannot be said for the fight for P3 because George Boothby applying all sorts of pressure to Niels Narks. Also, whilst Darren McCormack, he has that 4-second lead over Grant Korekas, but he did, and I don't want, okay, I know this sounds like it's a definitive commentator curse coming, but I'm just stating what happened in the past. Darren McCormack was dominating this race last season, and whilst he did win, he did have a moment through the chicane with about 10 minutes left to go. That's all I'm going to say. But it can happen. So even though those margins, they may seem large, they may seem comfortable, these guys are still pushing, and they only know one speed. They only know full attack, because as soon as you start to kind of back off away from your instincts, that's when the mistakes kick in, and this circuit will not forgive you if you start to make those sorts of errors, because it will spit you out very, very quickly. As Gert Fischer still unable to make his way past the Mercedes ahead of him. Yellow flag out for somebody, Malinowski. Last week's race winner, someone that we know is able to extract the very best out of that Porsche, but I have a horrible feeling that a little bit like some of the despair that we saw Florian Duerkop running into today, that the Veloce driver himself has run into some similar strife. We'll go on board with this car, comes flying in towards the first apex. Second one's okay. Third one a bit wide. Fourth one, that's the problem. And he does tag the wall on exit as well. Big slide, but fast hands from the pole. And you can see Amir Hosseini then stinks on the inside, so thank you very much. Takes a freebie and goes up into the top 15. And of course, if you're unfamiliar, Maciej does race in VR, one of very few people, the top echelons of sim racing to do so. And imagine that was a pretty terrifying and bumpy ride, but managing to at least minimize the damage. And that in itself, you know, it's obviously, it's not a skill. You don't really want to be good at crashing, but at the same time, when things do go horribly wrong, you need to be good at being able to try to minimize how bad the crash is going to be. And Maciej did a perfect example of doing that. The Porsche in particular, very sensitive in terms of those controls and how you manipulate the kind of the weight transfer of that car. And even in that scenario, was able to stop it from spinning around entirely on him and dropping several positions in the process. So minimizing the damage very well. Max Florens still applying the pressure to Gert Fischer. Gert Fischer losing a little bit of time to Rozier just up ahead, but these drivers very close together as Cody Sherratt close to the rear diffuser of Marco Bischoff. For Sasha Vassner, now has he got the move done? It looks like he has. I think down the inside at the chicane, job done. Timo Karppinen dropping a couple of car lengths behind, and eventually the Unicorns of Love Car able to get that one sorted, done and dusted. We'll go on board with what it looked like from the Mercedes. The darkness here at Watkins Glen, making for some fantastic action, heading towards that inside line. And Timo Karppinen, does he back out of the throttle? I think he does lift just a little bit on the entry. As you see, as we get through there, just about enough room given between the pair of them. And Sasha Vassner continuing his charge through the field, showing some great pace considering what was a less than ideal qualifying from the Unicorns of Love Car. As Karppinen now has some company from the likes of Proel, Veet Shorker putting him under pressure. And we've also got Bischoff, Sherratt, Manar, who almost looking up the inside in towards turn 11. Has to back out of the throttle, otherwise that's a visit to the concrete. But manages, thankfully, to keep it out of the wall. But that's a fight that is starting to build up. Maybe the tyres on board Bischoff's car. I think he did box pretty early in this race, if memory serves. And perhaps starting to struggle a little bit. And of course, he's still got 17 minutes left to go. That is over a quarter of this race distance. It's going to be a tricky one to keep the pace up. Must admit that right now it is not particularly looking like that we have rain on the way, but something certainly to keep an eye on. On board the front splitter of Cody Sherratt, who's looking out the inside of the championship leader. Can't get it done. You see that McLaren squirming its way over the curbs, but Sherratt unable to get himself into a spot where he can make an overtake happen and stick. So have to wait for another opportunity. George Boothby as well dropped a little bit away from Niels Narks. who has held on to that P3 spot 5 seconds apiece between P1, P2 and then P3 as well. So those gaps starting to open up a little bit this phase of the race. And Darren McCormack again locking in some fantastic pace, but he's certainly been kept a lot more honest on this occasion than he was last time we went racing at Watkins Glen. Also, a big thank you again to all of those that have followed. We are just 3 followers away from 2100 as Philip Manar. We were waiting for it. Luke Whitehead, the specialist of that last season when we were here. Philip Manar sent it up the inside in towards turn number 9, and there's, imagine, some flashing of the lights from Cody Sherritt, but Manar manages to get through on his compatriot and himself up into P11. Of course, he was running around higher up than that previously, so he'll be looking to use the pace that he surely still has in that Ferrari and see if he can get himself some more points from this one. But Cody Sherritt caught a little bit napping there. Aggressive and quite an aggressive entry in towards turn 1 as well. It's not the first time we've seen that through that. And a big thank you there with the Soldier 2 come through simultaneously. I think we are now just 1 follower away from 2,100, and it'd be incredible to nudge our way over that milestone today. George Boothby still 3/4 of a second to a second away from the BS Plus competition driver. Just can't quite lock into the slipstream. That BMW needs to find a little bit more pace if he can. Florence still battling away with Gert Fischer. Wide moment for Gert Fischer on the exit of turn 5 there. Manages to keep it composed just about. And altogether, Tommy Rozier has escaped a little bit up the road. And of course, Manar still battling away with Marco Bischoff as he looks to hook up that pace in the Ferrari. Dennis Wietschorker, driver that has continued to find pace and form in this McLaren. And there it is. Big thank you to Boshi, Moshpit, Baron Farrier, Mojo, Daniel, all the ones I can see up on my feed there for those recent follows, because we have just nudged away over that milestone. Big thank you for you, and I think you will be rewarded for your loyalty and dedication, because the fight for P3 is about to get very interesting, because Michael Frey, that is, bit of traffic for Niels Niox, has suddenly brought this gap down from 3/4 of a second to just 3/10. And for the first time, George Boothby is really hooked into the slipstream of this BMW. Now, we know that BMW is quick in a straight line as they wind their way up through turn 1, 2, and 3. How much of an advantage does this give the Ferrari? And I tell you what, it's not much. The gap's extending. George Boothby dropping away from that BMW. But the question is that by being in this sort of proximity at this stage of the lap, how does it play out into the rest of the circuit? Because this is where the Ferrari is going to be quick, planted, composed in medium and high speed like no other. Unlike that Porsche in the background that's going into Narnia and exploring all of the track for what it's worth. But George Boothby seems very calm through this phase of the lap. And I feel like he's going to have to take a bit of a leaf out of his teammates' book to try to make this move. Maybe it'll be the send up the inside in towards turn 9 if he can carry momentum on the exit. But you can see he's got Niels a little bit worried for the first time. Just trying to break that slipstream just a tad. Also, a bit of a message to George Boothby. So I am going to fight you. Of course, both of these drivers very much involved in that championship fight, especially when you consider Marco Bischoff not having the best of times today. But Dario Emelo, P5, great consistency from him as well, so he'll be closing that gap to your points leader. But Boothby, Niox, some of the most successful racers on ACC going toe-to-toe as we look towards Philip Manar. He was very close there on the run in towards turn number 9. Couldn't quite make it stick, but he's absolutely glued. Would he send out the inside turn 11? He seems to have thought about it before. Oh, you can see that Ferrari just gets the nose tucked in that little bit better than the McLaren ahead, but the aero wash from the rear wing and diffuser of the McLaren ahead just starts to take that momentum away from the Ferrari, and so it will be a drag race once again. George Boothby further back than he was last time around. No hope of making a move into the chicane on this occasion. Max Florence close up to the back of Gert Fischer. Is there anything that he can do about the BMW himself? The BMW looking very quick down the back straight, unable, and Mercedes unable to really contend with the fellow German manufacturer. Menard unable to contend, but here comes Sasha Vassner, continuing his charge up through the field. Maciej Malinowski, difficult day in the cockpit for him after such fantastic success last week, down to P17. Sasha Vassner up into P16, and that is 19 positions gained for the German driver. Also action kicking off just behind them as well, because Vincent Proel having to go defensive from Dennis Wietschoker, who is looking towards that outside line, trying to go for the over and under on the exit of Chute corner, but can't get the job done there. Philip Menard with a bit of a run on the exit, trying to maybe now go down towards the inside. As close as he's been, it's his best opportunity so far. Bischoff has a championship to think about as well, remember, and he's side by side. The South African now takes the outside line, heading in towards turn 9. It's going to be tricky to make it stick through there. Cody Sherratt has got a great view. In actual fact, he's got a great run on the exit, almost up the inside of the Ferrari ahead of him. But he can't make it stick, and they will stay as they were. Gert Fischer and Max Florence were very close as well, but they stayed. Marco Bischoff, that was a wide line, and that could give a bit of an opportunity to Philip Menard. Not down towards turn 1, but up the chicane. Up the straight, excuse me, and then in towards the chicane. See that McLaren squarely on the exit again. Those rear tyres not providing the level of traction that Marco Bischoff would have wanted. 2/10 the gap. How good is the speed? How much power does this McLaren have? Iamolo briefly bringing out the white flag, and he's brought out the yellow flag as well. I think he briefly had a moment through a chicane. He's managed to gather it all up. Max Florence unable to make anything stick, and same goes for Menard and Sherratt. So once again, the McLaren just about having enough of an advantage to keep it together on this occasion. Timo Carpenter, Malinowski dropping another position. Malinowski really struggling. I think that damage still on board. The Porsche now being sent up the inside from Vincent Proel. Late opportunity down the inside of turn 5, and I think Dennis Wietschoker might be about to put a move on the number 16 car as well, trying to get to that inside line. Can't do it. Has to head to the outside. Trying to go for the over and under. But that Porsche is so strong. The flat 6 torque potential. Showing him a nose up the inside, and it's a bit of a wiggle from the Veloce car. You can see fighting the traction on exit. We know the quick hands of Maciej able to keep that car on the limit time and time again, but that damage not helping whatsoever. Wietschoker trying to surprise the Porsche out the inside, but can't get alongside. Meanwhile, almost the time board giving me a little bit too much hope there. Niels Narks and George Boothby extremely close together on circuit. Again, the fight for the podium still on. Times evening out between P1 and P2. So it was 3 seconds before the stops, up to 5 seconds. Carreras has been the only one really able to remotely keep honest with Dara McCormack over this one. He has been faultless so far, but still 8.5 minutes left to go. George Boothby close, but not close enough. BMW Power able to keep that 296 behind. And this was exactly the sort of problem that Niels ran into last week. He was applying so much pressure to Marco Bischoff, but just was unable to keep with that straight line speed on the back straight. Just was unable to make something happen. So it's a bit of a role reversal in that regard. But you know, that's kind of the world of GT3 racing and BOP sometimes. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't go your way. Sometimes you'll be the one with the power advantages. Other times it will be down the way of cornering. So it can go back and forth in that regard. Meanwhile, as the lights emerge out from behind the trees. Bischoff still keeping Menard and Sherratt just outside of those top 10 positions. And I'll tell you what, this fight is very slowly but surely bringing in the likes of Valentine and Jardier into this scrap as well. Cody Sherratt close enough to Menard to force him to just be a little bit defensive on the exit. Just show that once again he is also going to be fighting this position out as well. And in towards turn 9 they go. You see that McLaren managing to hold itself in a pretty composed spot. You see, but the difficulty is that naturally, in terms of platforms, the McLaren and the Ferrari are kind of strong in basically the same areas, except that the McLaren has that bit of a straight line speed advantage. And so even with the weaker tyre scenario that Marco Bischoff finds himself in right now, that's why he is able to keep these other cars behind, because he has just got that little bit of an ace up his sleeve. But, of course, part of being an incredible driver and a part of being someone that is able to contend with trying to win this championship is having that little bit of know-how, having that strategy of knowing that the undercut, you know, it's not going to make maybe your net race time the fastest, but track position, that's what scores you points, and that is exactly what he has gambled on so far. 6.5 minutes left to go, having to defend like a lion if he wants to keep on to that top 10 spot, because Philip Minnaar, Sherritt applying the pressure, Florence still applying the pressure to the BMW Gert Fischer, as well as Dennis Wietschorker, who has managed to dispatch of Malinowski, who has another big slide, and we'll have the likes of De Campo making his way up to the rear of that portion in just a moment, I am sure, because unfortunately that Veloce car, ever since that damage, has been tumbling down the positions, just I think now suffering in a straight line, suffering with overall balance, overall pace. Luke Anderson suffering a little bit of a spooky moment over the chicane there, but manages to keep it together, thankfully. And as we go towards the final 5 or so minutes of this race, some of these fights still absolutely on and going down to the wire. The 31st lap started by the Irishman Darren McCormack, who has led since the very start of the race. George Boothby applying more and more pressure to this BMW. This is the closest he has been in a while, but we'll go on board and watch this for a little bit of a sad sight, because that BMW, as they climb the hill, I think this is where the BMW really starts to get his advantage. Just that little bit of additional power over the crests of turn 2 and 3. That 2/10 margin opens up to nearly half a second by the time they get to the chicane, and it's all about how brave does George Boothby feel. Meanwhile, speaking of bravery, Maciej Malinowski might be having to put on a bit of a brave face at the moment inside that VI headset, because he's got the pressure now of Mattia De Campo, who's been closing the gap, and he's also got Kolosov, Duran applying pressure soon as well. And I think this Porsche is going to be losing out very heavily. He is going to go towards that inside line, but here comes the number 15 car around the outside. He does fight it entirely, and there is contact and just about missing those barriers. And if you're not familiar with this circuit, those barriers are a lot scarier than more intimidating you think, because they don't move. They are an immovable object, and trust me, your car is not an unstoppable force. So the McLaren of the number 15 just about managing to keep it out of those, but we'll have to see if the stewards have anything to say about that. In fact, we will also try to check up generally with our stewards' inquiries. So much action, so many battles from start to finish in this one. And I can tell you there's been a warning given out to the number 19, and that was Philip Minnaar for an avoidable contact. But other than that, no other penalties have been given out in this race. So in actual fact, despite the carnage, the chaos, and the battles on circuit, in the stewards' box at least, it's been relatively calm. A lot of investigations, but very few actually resulting in penalties for drivers. McCormack then still leads the way ahead of Korekas. 5.5 seconds is the lead, and then 6 seconds down to Niels Narks, who is still fighting off the hard-charging Ferrari of George Boothby in that number 2 car, looking to once again deliver another batch of points to his championship tally, as that is Karppinen and Vincent Proel scrabbling away towards turn 1. Very close margins between them, and it's going to be an interesting fight actually between the Lamborghini and the Ferrari. That Ferrari may have about enough. It will make something stick. We've actually got another drag race going on now between De Campo and Kolosov, dropping away from the Porsche of Maciej, so we'll chime in on each of these as we make our way to the chicane. Proel, the first one, the number 40, to try to make a move, try to go around the outside, can't make it stick on Mr. Carpet, has the cornering grip and potential, but unable to make anything stick. Meanwhile, De Campo does hold on to the position ahead of Kolosov. McLaren versus Aston Martin, flashing the headlights there from Kolosov, not too happy with what played out. But I didn't see anything too aggressive, I don't think, from the Italian driver. But whether or not anything takes place in the steward room, we will have to wait and see. 2 more laps left to go then, as Darren McCormack is about to start the 33rd and penultimate lap of this incredible race, as these drivers who have been in full concentration mode for nearly 60 minutes of action to the end of this one, trying to eke out every bit of track, every advantage, use up as much curb as you can, but being wary of where those limits are, where the potential is in each of these pieces of GT3 machinery, and George Boothby, I think, has extracted everything he dared to find in this 296, but he knows better than anyone that consistency is key. Sits P3 in the standings at the moment, just 100 or so points away from Marco Bischoff, and both George Boothby and Low, they are going to be extremely tight on points by the end of it. It's only 8 points separating them as it stands, and they may in fact both jump Marco in the standings after this one, so this could well end up being one of Bischoff's drop scores. Boothby unable to do anything on this lap. Marco Bischoff trying desperately still to hold on to P10. You saw the slide as he went through that final apex of the chicane, wringing the neck out of that McLaren on the limit as much as he can possibly be with those tyres. Really trying to go and try Timo Karppinen off at the chicane. The fight with Vincent Proel, something has gone awry there for the Lamborghini driver. Oh my goodness, you saw it there off the second apex. Just a big kick of oversteer. I don't think there was actually any contact. Just sent the car almost into a half spin, but manages to just about keep it together as Dara McCormack then starts the final lap of this race. 5.5 seconds is the lead to Grant Carecas. You can just about see those headlights in the background. That's Toro Grosso. That is traffic in between those two. It's been commanding so far since lights out. George Boothby still absolutely hassling the back of the BS Plus competition driver. One of the most experienced sim racers around the entire world is Niels Narks, and whilst it's a 3/10 margin on exit of turn 1, that BMW, as we've seen time and time again, it has so much straight line speed to work with. He just needs to keep calm and composed on this final run through, and he should just about have enough, unless it's a Hail Mary from the number 2 car. George Boothby, he knows what's at stake here. He knows that there's over half a championship left to go, and Niels does keep it calm and collected through there. Low fares fairly well through there as well. He's had a moment himself through the race, but he manages to get through there cleanly on this occasion. Max Florens unable to do anything like Gert Fischer in front as well. These AMGs quite clearly have a good pace today, but I tell you what, there's only one of them inside of the top 5, so they haven't been that dominant in the grand scheme of things. Just Dara McCormack able to extract a huge amount of potential from that car. That just shows you that driver-car combination mighty indeed. Battles further down the order as well, but he hasn't had much airtime, so I better make sure that he gets it here. We didn't get to interview him last season when he took victory here at Watkins Glen, and whilst it has been a calm place for the Irishman at the front of the field, the number 17 car, he got the job done in qualifying. He's nailed every single lap of this race, and it's the 5th different winner of the season. Dara McCormack takes victory here for Watkins Glen. Grant Carecas will come home in a P2. George Boothby gave it everything he had, but this time the podium finish goes away of Niels Narks, just ahead of the Veloce driver. Fantastic fight to the end between those two. Gert Fischer versus Max Florens, another tussle to the end. BMW, again, straight line speed good enough to hold on to that one as Philip Manar chases down Marco Bischoff, but the championship leader, but I think soon to be man that just sits inside the top 3, but still, of course, the 2-time Pro Series champion and number 1 man on the LFM platform. That's Philip Manar. My goodness, breaks the sound back here with the way he went into the wall there. Marco Bischoff rounds out the top 10. Maciej Malinowski is going to limp home to round out the top 20 with De Campo, the Italian, just behind Manson, unable to get past Zach Duran at the end of the race as well. And Matthias Kuhn, the final little scramble going on in the grid as he hunts around the back of Nikita Orozyrev for 28th position. And it will be the likes of Alex Torregrossa, I think, who is still completing his lap. He's got a lot of traffic and he's now making his way through the Spaniard as he looks to come through and finish out this one. As an national fan, knows he's registering him as being, I think it's Florian Duakop. That'll be the last one to cross line. Of course, a man that has had a very unfortunate time so far today. A tricky one. A couple of commentator curses from yours truly. Apologies for that one. But the number 18 car still going to the end of this one and crossing the line in 30th position. So Watkins Glen comes to an end, and there's another little fun fact for you that the combined age of P1 and P2 less than and the man that takes P3 today. Dara McCormack, Karekas, and Nils Narks make up your podium, and hopefully we will be able to head into some interviews with them in just a moment. Like I say, we had a bit of a shambles last time that we tried to interview Dara, but fingers crossed it'll go better this time. I have faith. I've probably commentated curse myself there in that regard, but we do have him waiting in for an interview, so fingers crossed we can bring him in and hopefully it'll go better on this occasion. But after dominating in qualifying, carrying that momentum over into the race, Dara McCormack for the second time at Watkins Glen, taking victory on the bounce in 2 seasons in a row. Fingers crossed we can hear you on this occasion, but how are you feeling after this one, mate?
I'm feeling good, thank you, John. Yeah, it was definitely reminiscent of the last race of the last season. So yeah, I'm happy. A little bit too strong of a car this time, I will admit. So took it a little bit easy in the race. Just wanted to make sure I brought it home in P1. But yeah, really strong quality secured me P1. So yeah, I'm happy with my performance. Yeah, it was really clean overall.
I'll tell you what, that's a message and a half to your competitors, isn't it? Taking it easy in the race, and at times 2 to 3 tenths clear of anyone in terms of race pace in that one. And let's also talk about that qualifying lap. You know, especially turn 11, I was on the edge of my seat seeing you swing it into that one. I mean, of course, I think at that point you probably knew that there was a good chance that you had pole position dialed in. So was it a case of just send it and see what happened, or you know, how satisfying was it to see that 41 come through at the very end of the session?
Yeah, it was really nice. I hooked together a very, very good last sector. It was one of my strongest that I've done overall. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. The middle sector was a little bit rough, so yeah, it was a really good lap overall. I'm super happy to hook that up in the qualifying.
Yeah, fantastic, and then yeah, ever the critic of your performance. Of course, at the very best, you know, when you're at the top level of sim racing, you have to be nitpicking at each of those margins. But yeah, there's a warning for those looking to take you on at Watkins Glen. Again, even more on the table and potential for you around here. Incredible lights to flag victory from you, Dara, and a very nice win to add to your tally in the Pro Series. So fantastic stuff there. Next week we'll be heading to Kyle Army. Now, fingers crossed, I'm hoping that we might have you there for that one. So are we likely to have you there for the 6th round?
Yeah, should do. Bob's looking good. I handcrafted it myself, so I hope it's good.
It's only fair for you to turn up then, I think. Fantastic stuff. So yeah, Kyle Army, 90 minutes of action there as well for that one. So, you know, changes things up a little bit, makes things like tyre wear management a little bit more to play with, and a bit of a factor to take into consideration. So thoughts and feelings heading into that one?
I do like Kyle Army, and of course, we did a lot of prep before VEM, which unfortunately didn't happen. So, yeah, I think I'm well prepared, at least setup wise and knowledge wise. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I believe it's going to be a hot race, so going to be a little bit tough for the Mercedes, a little bit tougher than other cars. So, yeah, just really need to keep those tires in check and watch what I'm doing. So, yeah, it's going to be a good race, I believe. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I have no doubt. Yeah, the Mercedes is a little bit of a time muncher at times, but yeah, navigating it beautifully today. But when we head over to South Africa next week, yeah, we'll have to see how you get on with that one. But once again, Dara, incredible, and also nice to actually have you in the comms box this time for an interview that we could get through. We didn't have the best of luck last time around, so incredible stuff from you today. Big congratulations on that victory, and best of luck next week when we head over to Kyle Army.
Perfect. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks a lot, Dara. Take care. Great to speak to the man from Williams Esports then, who takes that victory, dominated qualifying, dominated the race, and as you heard there, it sort of almost sounded like it was just a bit of a walk in the park, really, for Dara in all of that. Just kind of, you know, moseying around Watkins Glen, casually lapping quarter of a second faster than most of the field at times. Yeah. A driver-car combination, which is, you know, it's very much known that Dara is an absolute weapon behind the wheel of any car that he drives. Very dialed in, of course, with that Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo, and when you combine that with a handy BOP around Watkins Glen as well, that is a mighty combination, and he seems to be feeling confident heading into Kyle Army as well, so a word of warning heading into that one. And also, of course, that we unfortunately did have that reschedule for VEM. But next week, we will be back on target, and we will be resuming that. So do look to join us for that as well. So we have double Kyalami on the calendar as well. It's a fantastic race circuit. Gives me some... there are elements that for me feel like it transitions quite well with Watkins Glen, because it's, part of the circuit is so wide, that run towards turn 1. It's about 6 car wide on entry and about 3 car wide on the exit. So you make for an interesting lap 1, and certainly for some incredible battles as well. And as in fact we get an extra little bonus interview today as well. Fantastic stuff. We get Niels Narks in as well, who was under pressure for a significant portion of that second stint. George Boothby hassling the back of your BMW all the way to the end, but this time the straight line speed falling a little bit in favour with you, Niels, and managing to keep that Veloce car behind. Congratulations on the podium. Maybe a little bit of frustration to not be higher up and contending for the win, but how are you feeling after that one?
Good, actually. I think everybody who's around me in the championship was behind. So this was, overall, looking at that, it was good. And I think I had hopes early on. Maybe I started early this afternoon with practice, because I just came home yesterday from a trip. Looked good pace-wise. Took me a bit to catch up to the Bob lap. Seemed super fast, but eventually I got there. So I thought, okay, maybe we can do something. But then I saw Dara driving a lap on the practice server where I was like half a second clear of everyone, and then I knew, okay, someone forgot the Mercedes. And I thought, okay, there's a lot of Mercedes on the grid, but he was the only one that was so fast. So insane job from him. Probably the entire week, squeezing out all the other cars as well is not easy. So he popped everyone, practiced his own car, and showed us a lesson here today. So in that regard, I'm pretty happy with P3, I'd say.
Yeah, because we were just talking to Dara, and an absolutely a mad driver-car combination today, and really extracting a huge amount of potential in that one. Now, I want to take you back to lap 1 of the race, because on the starting grid, I was talking up the potential for you to kind of, put a cat amongst the pigeons as such with Dara, and stopping him from maybe being able to run away at the beginning of the race, with that BMW, the slipstream, charging up the hill. It got a little bit spooky on the run into turn 3, I think, because you and Grantis, it got very close, so you had to get on the brakes at one point there. How much of a heart-and-mouth moment was that in the cockpit of the BMW for you?
Yeah, I hope it was just netcode. Otherwise, it was a bit weird and risky from Grantas in those S's there to squeeze me. Like, I didn't really have a run or anything. Yeah, I don't know. I guess in the end, I had the car width that he's allowed to give me or forced to give me. But yeah, I would have obviously liked a bit more room there, because if we're parking there, we take out 40 cars. Would have certainly been. But yeah, he knew his top speed disadvantage in the Ferrari, so he definitely wanted to have the draft of Dara, and I know Dara wanted to give it to me, so we were side by side into the chicane, and Dara would be gone. So everybody had their own plan there on the straight. But yeah, we managed. We're good drivers, I guess, after all, and we were single file into and after the chicane. So yeah, I guess was the only real moment of the race there. And eventually, he also showed that the Ferrari had a bit of an edge there. I think it was 6 seconds clear in the end. Not much I could do against that, I felt. So I'll just take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fantastic racing between just about enough of a margin given between each of you, and of course a little bit of a kind of role reversal for you from the last couple of races, because you found yourself, whether it be through strategy or pace and kind of charging your way towards battling for the podium positions in the past few races. You're really attacking in those closing stages. It's a little bit different on this occasion, wasn't it? George Boothby, he kept you honest in the majority of that second stint, and how much pressure did you feel like you were under? Was it kind of a comfortable journey to the flag, or was it a kind of case of every time you went through a chicane of deep breath and pray that the curbs are kind to you?
Yeah, it's indeed me in the chicane that was the bigger challenge, I think, because I think at one point Boothby was 0.1 behind out of turn 1, and you could just see that the Ferrari does not have the straight line speed, because I guess it's so good in the corners that BOP, already the in-game BOP, has to basically take away his engine, else the car's going to be too quick. And that's a bit we just saw how this plays out when you have so many different cars on the grid. BMW not as fast in the corner, so we have a bit more straight line speed up to a point here. The Ferrari's the other way around, so this time he was in the position where he was faster but couldn't pass. And I kind of saw that early on, that he couldn't have a run. It was impossible for him, so all I had to do was stay clear of mistakes, not die in the chicane, and then manage and bring it home.
Yeah, keeping it neat and tidy to the end, and like I say, banking in some very useful points indeed in terms of championship consistency is key. And once again, a very solid result delivered from you. Heading to Kyalami next week, so have a 90-minute race as well around there. So a little bit of that additional kind of factors of tyre wear and things like that in the race. Any thoughts or feelings about how the BMW may be looking to take around the streets of South Africa?
We'll probably have to look at the Mercedes, because I know Dara has already been very active with BOP laps there for the VAM round that was set to happen 2 weeks ago, but is postponed until 3 weeks from now? I don't know.
It'll be next weekend for that one. Yeah, unfortunately we had some issues with the AC platform, so yeah, 2-week delay, but we're back on schedule soon.
Yeah. The BOP there is a bit set. I know the lap for the BMW is already really good, so I'm hoping nobody's going to improve that, and just take a look at the Mercedes after what we saw today, and then maybe we can bring the fight again. 90 minutes tire wear, hard to tell really. Kyalami's really weird this patch. I feel we're driving slightly different setups there, very mechanically focused to get the balance. The downforce doesn't seem to matter as much. The track is something like 1,800 meters high, so the air is a bit thinner, which just makes the downforce a smaller factor, so to say, and it really shows in the setups that we're focusing more on the mechanical area, which is really interesting. And I'm not yet sure how the tires will take it, having a bit more aggressive approach in that area. So yeah, a lot of hopes going into that race, but eventually you never really know. And then you show up for the race, and some car nobody had on the radar is going to be fast. Maybe it's the Honda. Who knows?
Yeah, perhaps we'll see if I think it was Marco Yonkers that was wielding that one at Nürburgring memory serves. We'll see if he comes flying through the field once again. Also, fantastic to get those little snippets. I'm sure there'll be a few people watching in the stream, with a notepad out there, listening to those bits of advice around kind of the setup and aspects of how to maximise the performance of these cars, different locations, different focuses, and in terms of how you get that potential out. Fantastic stuff and insight to hear. So brilliant stuff from you today again. So another podium added to your tally, Niels, and another big batch points for the championship. So congratulations on the podium to you today, and best of luck at Kyalami next week.
Thanks for hosting, and see ya.
Thanks a lot, Niels. Take care. Great stuff then to talk to Niels as well. So I think that will be all of our interviews for today. But great to talk to the drivers that finished P1 and P3 at the end of this 60-minute race, and an incredible amount of drama action. And it's funny, there were a couple of times where it felt like things had started to sort of maybe calm down just a little bit here and there, and all of a sudden then everyone falling off the track left, right, and centre. I've commentator cursed half the grid, and that it just shows how hard these guys are pushing. It's when things start to go wrong that you start to get an idea of just how on the limit they are, how much they're extracting out of these cars, and how hard they're pushing each other to really try to eke out everything that they possibly can around these incredible circuits. So amazing stuff from all of the drivers today, as I look to take a bit of a run through the results from today's race. So Dara McCormack takes P1 here at Watkins Glen ahead of Karekas and Niels Knox rounding out the podium. Boothby, Iamalo, Tansford Zahaka, Razir, Fisher, Florence, Bischoff, Menard, Sherritt, Barrett, Jardier and Hosseini round out your top 15. Marco Bischoff, difficult day for him in terms of the championship. Not what he would have wanted from this one. Vassner improves 19 positions to be the biggest mover on the grid. P16. Proel, Vitshalka, Karpinen, De Campo, Kolsov, Duran, Manson, Malinowski, Industroza, Addison, Orozaev, Kun, Spansky, and Duakop see your way to the end of the top 30. And then your cars that finished a lap down, Torregrossa and Frey, with your retirees being Ida, Santama, Ogrodkov, Martins, Tiskovic, Neuwirth, Adam and Hoban who unfortunately we didn't see any more of after his incident at the beginning of the race. Big shame not to see him. It would have been very interesting to see what he was able to extract from that Unicorns of Love Mercedes and see what he would have been able to deliver, because of course we know how good he can be in that car. So incredible stuff here from the Case King Pro Series once again, but that is going to be it for today. Big thank you to all of you that followed the channel for the first time, getting us over that 2,100 milestone on the followers, and also to the 4 of you that put in your subscriptions as well. Of course, we are now affiliated on Twitch, so if you do fancy following the action and giving that little bit of extra generosity, of course it is not needed, but if you're feeling kind and want to show some support to all of those that make this possible, then of course you are very welcome to subscribe to the channel. But if you just want to stay in tune with the action and just join us each week for some incredible racing, because we would love to have you here, then do follow, and we'll be back next week for all the action at Kyalami. And if you have sat there and you fancy dabbling in your efforts behind the wheel as well in the world of LFM, then never fear, because you can head over to lowfuelmotorsport.com. You can get yourself signed up, get yourself a license, you can work your way up through the ranks and compete with those drivers that you see on your screen tonight, and for some incredible prizes across the likes of the Pro Series, and of course also with the daily racing that goes on over at LFM as well. So plenty of stuff to get involved in, plenty of other series, and if maybe ACC GT3 isn't quite your thing, of course AC1 supported on the LFM platform as well. Lots of fun stuff to get involved in and dive into with that as well. We have the likes of stuff from the Nordschleifer, touring cars, open wheelers, you name it. I think Mazda MX-5s are a little bit of a fan favourite, and if you saw the Daytona 24 recently, the kind of support races that the MX-5s put on there, it gets pretty mad on some occasions. I'm fairly confident the same sort of thing happens in the LFM servers as well, so lots of fun to get involved with all of that. If you fancy doing some deliberate off-roading and not just like me when you fall off a track by accident, you can also join the WRC club that we have over at LFM as well and see how your rallying skills get on. And if you just want to be a part of this amazing community, stay a little bit more in tune with the action and all the news that we have coming from the team, then you can also join the Discord server as well. We're a friendly bunch in there, and you can share all of your favourite things, real racing, virtual racing, pictures of your pets, you name it. And trust me, the community will welcome you with open arms. So do look to join us with all of that. Fantastic to have all of you here as we continue this incredible journey. And once again, thank you so much for the amazing support. It is very much appreciated, and look forward to seeing where this all goes, and that being Kyalami next week on the calendar for the Pro Series. So same time, same place next week when we head to South Africa. So join us then. But 5 different winners in 5 races. Will it be a 6th when we get to next week, or will we have our first repeat winner when we hit the halfway point in the season? We'll have to wait and see, but don't miss it. Look forward to seeing as many of you then as possible. But for tonight then, it's goodbye.